Let me show you 5 easy tricks to fix mixed frame rates in Premiere Pro. Mixed frame rates are one of the biggest reasons footage looks choppy, jittery, or slightly off in Premiere Pro, especially for beginners. When you combine clips shot at different frame rates like 24, 30, 50, or 60 frames per second in the same timeline, Premiere tries to compensate automatically, but it often does a poor job unless you tell it exactly how to behave. Let's go through 5 simple tricks that will instantly fix mixed frame rate issues and make your edits look smooth and professional. Match the timeline frame rate before you start editing. One of the most common beginner mistakes is letting Premiere create the timeline automatically without checking the frame rate. If your first clip is 30 frames per second, but most of your footage is 24 frames per second, your entire sequence will be locked to 30 frames per second, and everything else will stutter slightly. To fix this properly, decide your main frame rate first, usually 24 frames per second for cinematic content, or 30 frames per second for YouTube. Create a new sequence manually by going to the New Item button in the project panel and choosing Sequence, then select a preset that matches your chosen frame rate exactly, or you can switch to Settings tab and select the frame rate from Time-Based menu. Once the sequence is created, bring your clips into it instead of letting Premiere decide for you. This alone fixes a huge percentage of mixed frame rate problems before they even start. Use Interpret Footage to control how clips play. When clips are shot at different frame rates, Premiere plays them based on how they were recorded, not how your timeline works. That's where Interpret Footage becomes essential. To fix this, right-click any clip in the project panel and choose Modify, then Interpret Footage. From here, select Assume this frame rate and type in the same frame rate as your sequence, whether that's 24 or 30 frames per second. This forces Premiere to play the clip correctly inside the timeline instead of auto-converting it. This is especially important when mixing 60 frames per second clips with 24 frames per second timelines, because it prevents micro-stutter and uneven motion. Once interpreted correctly, the clip moves naturally and feels consistent with the rest of your footage. Convert high frame rate clips into true slow motion. A lot of beginners drop 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second clips into a 24 frames per second timeline, expecting slow motion automatically. But Premiere just throws away frames unless you tell it otherwise. To fix this properly, right-click your high frame rate clip in the project panel, open Interpret Footage, and set the frame rate to match your timeline. This converts the clip into real slow motion instead of fake interpolation. After that, drag the clip into your sequence and adjust the duration if needed. This method guarantees smooth motion without stutter and avoids the skippy look that happens when Premiere tries to guess which frames to keep. Turn off frame blending and use the correct time interpolation. Another hidden reason mixed frame rate footage looks bad is because Premiere automatically enables frame blending, or uses the wrong time interpolation method. To fix this, right-click the clip in your timeline, go to Time Interpolation, and choose the correct option based on your footage. If the clip plays at normal speed, set it to frame sampling to keep motion clean and sharp. If the clip is slowed down, switch to optical flow for smoother motion, but only when necessary. Avoid leaving clips on frame blending unless you specifically want motion blur artifacts, because frame blending often creates ghosting and softness that makes footage look unprofessional. Choosing the right interpolation instantly improves motion consistency. Export using the same frame rate as your timeline. Even if your timeline looks smooth, exporting at the wrong frame rate can reintroduce stutter and jitter. Many beginners accidentally export at a different frame rate than their sequence, which forces Premiere to resample frames again. To avoid this, go to Export Settings and make sure the frame rate matches your timeline exactly. If your sequence is 24 frames per second, export at 24 frames per second. If it's 30 frames per second, export at 30 frames per second. Avoid variable frame rate exports and always use constant frame rate settings. This ensures that all your fixes stay intact in the final video. Extra tips to prevent frame rate problems. If you record gameplay, screen recordings, or phone footage, your clips might be variable frame rate, which Premiere Pro struggles with. In those cases, converting footage to constant frame rate Using a reliable converter before editing can eliminate random stutters completely. Another helpful habit is labeling clips by frame rate inside the project panel so you instantly know what you're working with. Keeping your footage organized makes it easier to decide which clips need interpretation and which don't. Also, avoid mixing too many frame rates in the same sequence unless necessary. Consistency always leads to smoother results. So to fix mixed frame rates properly, always set your timeline frame rate first. Use interpret footage to control how clips play. Convert high frame rate clips into true slow motion. Choose the correct time interpolation method, and export using the same frame rate as your sequence. These 5 tricks remove stutter, jitter, and uneven motion and make your edits feel smooth and intentional instead of random. Once you understand how Premiere handles frame rates, mixed footage stops being a problem and becomes something you can control completely. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more helpful content.